Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello and welcome to my video. Okay, originally I wanted to talk about the Old Testament specifically because if you have seen my previous video, I was talking about the Bible, okay, the two parts of the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament in generic terms. So I thought that at first I want to record a video specifically only for the Old Testament where we'll talk about the history of the Old Testament. But since I've been getting a lot of feedback from those who did not agree with me, most likely Christians, alright, I think that I should actually address those concerns first before we move on to a next video or to the next topic, right? So there's this one person. I don't know whether this person is sharing an account or not, but let's read his or her comment. Okay, after a very terse remark here, he or she says, okay, do your research properly. Okay, implying that I did not do my research. I don't know where you get that idea, but you're wrong. All right. Then he or she continues. According to the Qur'an, the book of the Jews and Christians were reliable in the 7th century. So according to this person, okay, according to this person, the Bible, as we know it now, was in existence during the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, I'm sorry, okay, but I have to call out your bullshit here. Okay, that is just simply bullshit. Alright, because during the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the time of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was no Bible. Okay, this Bible, the Bible as we know it today, whether you call it the NIV or the RSV or the KJV, okay, there was no such Bible, okay, in Arabic during the time of the Prophet. Okay, what we have during the time of the Prophet in Arabia especially, okay, was a collection of canons, okay, called the Diatessaron. Alright, so what is the Diatessaron? Okay, the Diatessaron, okay, is in Syria, okay, because there was no Christian or even Jewish writings in Arabic. Alright, most of them were written in Hebrew or Syriac. So for the Christian writings, they were mostly written in Syriac, okay, or Aramaic, okay, Aramaic, Syrian Aramaic. Alright, so this Diatessaron, okay, was compiled by Tatian, okay. He's an Assyrian. He's from Assyria, okay, and he combined the Gospels as we know it today, okay, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, okay, into one single book. All right. So this Diatessaron, okay, is totally different, okay, in terms of narrative and in sequence from the current four Gospels. Okay, that actually puts paid to your remark that the so-called, by the so-called New Testament is reliable, okay, in the 7th century. Okay, there was no Arabic Bible until into the 11th century, right? That's like 400-500 years, okay, after the death of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So you're wrong there. Okay, you're very, very wrong there. I'm sorry to say that. Okay, so there was no Bible during the time of the Prophet, at least not the Bible that we know it today. There was only the Diatessaron. Okay, what the Arabs knew at the time was the Diatessaron, and it does not even have the letters of Paul. It does not even have Acts. It does not even have Revelations. It's only a compilation of the four Gospels that were condensed into one single volume. All right, so that's the first response that I have to that allegation. All right, so it's clear that there was no such thing as the Bible. All right, Bible in Arabic. Okay, so moving on. Okay, I posted this video in several Facebook groups. So there was this Christian by the name of Joseph Joreb Noab, I don't know whether I pronounced that correctly, who insisted that the Bible is preserved and without contradiction. So what I did was I shared a link from my website, okay, to condense that in one video, okay, to show the variance, okay. So this is a article, okay, from my website which has the correction, okay, correction from Mark's Gospel. Mark's Gospel, by the way, is considered to be the earliest Gospel. All right. So apparently, okay, there were mistakes in Mark, okay, that were corrected by the later Gospel writers, Matthew and Luke. Okay, these three are synoptics, but the Matthew and Luke Gospels, okay, were written later, and they tried to correct the narrative that was in Mark. All right. Okay. So let's quote from Randall Helms. Okay, Randall Helms is quite a well-known biblical scholar, okay, in the New Testament. So to quote Randall Helms regarding this issue, he says, okay, he writes, "All things considered then, Mark does not begin his story of Jesus very satisfactory. Indeed, within the 2 or 3 decades of Mark's completion, there were at least 2 or perhaps even 3 different writers, okay, or Christian groups who felt the need to produce an expanded and corrected version, okay. So viewed from their perspective, the Gospel of Mark had severe shortcomings. It contains no biblical narrative, it contains no birth narrative, okay. It implies Jesus as a repentant sinner, okay. And also it implies that he became the Son of God, Jesus becoming the Son of God only at his baptism, okay. It recounts no resurrection narratives or appearances, and it ends with the very unsatisfactory notion that the women who found the empty tomb were too afraid to speak about it to anyone else, okay. And moreover, okay, Randall Helms continues, Mark includes very little of Jesus' teachings. All right, okay. From Matthew's point of view, okay, Mark even misused, okay, the purpose of Jesus' use of parables. Okay, this is from Randall Helms. Now we move on to Raymond Brown. Okay, Raymond Brown speaking on the same topic regarding how Matthew and Luke corrected Mark. Raymond Brown says, okay, neither evangelists like Mark's redundancies, awkward Greek expressions, uncomplimentary presentation of the disciples and Mary, and embarrassing situations or statements about Jesus. When using Mark, both expanded the Markan accounts in light of post-resurrectional faith. Okay, so just to summarize what was quoted, but what I quoted just now from these two, Randall Helms and Raymond Brown, basically both of them were saying the same thing. All right, Matthew and Luke wrote their respective gospels to correct what they think or what they perceive as mistakes, okay, in Mark's gospel. And if you read Mark's gospel, it actually ends whereby the 2 women were at a tomb and the tomb was empty, and it just ends there. There was no conclusion to the story. All right. Whereas if you read Matthew and Luke, there was actually a subsequent storyline after the incident at the tomb. So if you look at that perspective, you can see why the authors of Matthew and Luke decided to rewrite the whole story by writing a new gospel to either complement or to imply some sort of continuity from the previous gospel, which is Mark. Okay, remember, keep in mind, I need to stress this very importantly, that Mark is actually considered to be the earliest, the oldest gospel prior to Luke, yes, to Matthew and to John. All right, John is probably the last of the gospels. It came much later, and in John is even worse because there's a lot of Greek philosophy and ridiculous Christological nonsense. All right, to put it mildly. So let's go back to the comments by the Christians. Okay, so we have this person called Kumar Wasim. So he was insisting regarding the variance. All right, he says that the variation between the texts prove that they were written by eyewitnesses, or at least people who talked to eyewitnesses. I don't think you can actually assume as such, because You see, the Bible was written over a span of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, all right? You see, even from, let's even look at the Old Testament right from the beginning. It's like 3,000 years old, right? More than, probably more. So there were a lot of redactions, there were a lot of distortions, there were a lot of additions, subtractions, people rewriting the stories. And we look at the New Testament, it's the same thing, okay? There's Mark, okay? Mark was written earlier, and then it was followed by Matthew and Luke. And Matthew and Luke decided that the story in Mark wasn't sufficient enough for their own, understanding of Jesus. So they decided to, add on to the story. We don't know where these stories come from, all right? Okay, and that is another point that I would like to stress, because in Islamic narrations, okay, in Islamic tradition, there is something which we call isnad. All right, isnad is the chain of narrations. Okay, because you see, in I'll just need to reverse back a bit. We have the Qur'an, all right, which is a revelation from God. This book, okay, is a revelation from God, and we have the hadiths. The hadiths are the collection of reports or sayings from the Prophet. Okay, they are not divine in the sense that it came directly from God, but they are considered holy because these are the words uttered by the Prophet himself. As the Prophet was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam revealed, guidance, revealed, had revelation from God. Therefore, he has to be someone who guides people in understanding the revelation. Therefore, whatever words that were uttered from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has to be inspired by God. Okay, so this is a different conception of inspiration compared to the biblical or to the Judeo-Christianity tradition, because in Judeo-Christianity, any Tom, Dick or Harry who claims to be inspired from God can actually write a new whole book and claim it to be from God. Whereas in Islam, we believe only prophets are inspired from God. And if a prophet speaks, therefore he is definitely inspired from God. But if someone else other than a prophet or any other prophet speaks, it is not inspired. No matter how that person claims to be to be directed or to be connected to God directly. All right. Okay. So having said that, all right. So as I was saying, we have this system in Islam called the isnad. All right, chain of narrations, whereby we can actually trace the people who relate a story. Let's say there's a hadith. I'll just think of something. All right. So I found this hadith. All right. So this is related in Bukhari and Muslim. Bukhari and Muslim are, by the way, narrators, are compilers of hadith narrations. Okay, they do not relate the hadiths directly. They just compile hadiths collected from other people. So I'm narrating a hadith here. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is said to have said that the deeds most loved by Allah, by God, are those done regularly, even though they are small. Okay, the narration is from Bukhari and Muslim. Now, how do we know that this narration is reliable? There is a system called isnad, as I said. So there will be one person, okay, who narrated this story, and then we will trace this person to another person who passed that narration to him, and then there will be another person who related that story to the other person, who narrated to the first person that narrated this story, and it goes on and goes on and goes on until it is traced back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are whole books written on the biographies of those who narrated these hadiths, all right, these stories. So we actually know whether this person is trustworthy, this person is forgetful but honest, or whether this person is a downright liar. Okay, if the person is a downright liar, we reject the hadith totally. The hadith is not considered to be authentic, even though, let's say, there's a whole list of people, okay, one of them is probably a liar but the rest are all truthful. We still reject that hadith because there's one liar there. All right, it has to be totally and completely narrated by sincere people whom we know their background. And let's say, okay, there's a whole list of people. Let's say, assume that there's a whole list of people. We know all of them except for one person. Even that hadith is rejected because it's not considered reliable. Unless if there is another chain of narrations relating the same hadith with a different set of people who are honest. Alright, all of them are honest. They narrate the same hadiths compared to the other chain, which has this honest people except for one doubtful person, but they are saying the same thing. We will accept it because there are two corroborating chains of narrators. Alright, so that is our system of understanding and filtering those stories which we think whether it's true or false. Alright, and of course there are other sciences behind that, but I'm just giving the brief explanation regarding this. So going back to the New Testament or even the Old Testament, where is your chain of narrations? Okay, how do you know those are trustworthy and truthful narrations? Who are those narrators? What are their names? Where do they come from? Okay, what is their background? How do you know they are truthful or they are lying? See, these are questions which Christians, they even Jews themselves, they don't have this kind of science to determine the narrators. They just simply take whatever they think is suitable for them and they just put it up into their books. Okay, so even from that perspective alone, it's obvious that the Bible that we have in our hands today is totally corrupted. Okay, and I can't stress this enough many times. The Quran never ever said, okay, that the Bible in your hands, in the Christians' hands, in the Jewish hands today, are the Torah, the Zabur, and the Injil. Alright, I've said this many times in my video, but apparently, some people, they just don't understand this, so I need to repeat this again and again. Okay, the Quran clearly says that the Torah, Zabur, and Injil are the original, versions from God. Okay, but the Quran never ever said, okay, that these three books are what you call as the Bible today. Alright, or that these three books are still preserved, okay, in the Bible today. Alright, okay, so to conclude my whole video, alright, okay, so we have addressed the issue of variations, okay, in the text. We don't know who are the narrators, okay. We don't know whether a story is truthful or otherwise, okay. In fact, I had one comment, I think on Facebook, when I was, when in my previous video, I was talking about how the story of Lot is, in the Bible, is very disgusting, whereby the daughters of Lot actually slept with, with Lot himself and got pregnant because of it, and I find that very disgusting. One person actually remarked, "Oh, that's a historical fact." I mean, come on, it doesn't make any sense. Why would that be a historical fact? Just because it's in the Bible, therefore it's true, then I'm sorry, I cannot accept that. Okay, just because it's in the Bible, it doesn't make it true. Alright, and also the Quran stressed many times, okay, as a Muslim, I believe that all the prophets are without sin. Okay, we have this doctrine called maksum. Okay, every single prophet from Adam right until Moses, right until Daud and Sulaiman alayhi salam, David and Solomon, right until the time of Jesus, and of course the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are all without sin. Okay, without sin, not even a single shred of sin. Now this is a concept which I think Christians will find very difficult to accept, but this is what we as Muslims believe. Okay, we put the prophets of God on a high pedestal, unlike you Christians. You Christians actually insult and you demean the prophets of God with your stories. Okay, and the story of Lot is just one example. I haven't even talked about Bathsheba with Solomon yet. Okay, the accusation that Solomon seduced Bathsheba. So that is a story for another time. Alright, so just to come back to my point here, to conclude my story, to conclude what we have talked about. So the Bible at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not the Bible that we have in our hands today. Okay, it's a totally different text. Okay, there was no Arabic Bible right until the 11th century. Alright, so the Bible, or what is passed off as the Bible in Arabia, okay, is called the Diatessaron for the Christians. Alright, and of course for the Jewish community in Medina, I believe that is in Hebrew. It was written in Hebrew. Okay, they had the Torah. Okay, but I think it's not the same thing as what you have in you have today. So there's no evidence at all that the Bible in your hands is the same as it was in the 7th century. There's no evidence at all that the Bible in your hands is the same as in the 1st or the 2nd century. Okay? So I've already quoted Randall Helms. I've already quoted Raymond Brown. Okay? The Bible is totally unreliable. Okay? I'm sorry to say this, Christians. You just need to live up to the fact that the Quran already spoke about this like 1,400 years ago, that the Bible is unreliable. Okay? So, thank you for listening to me. Okay, I'll conclude here by saying that the Quran never says that the Bible is reliable, and the Quran also never says that the Bible in your hands today are the same as during the time of the Prophet. And the Quran also never says that the Zabur, the Taurat, and the Injil are the same as your Bible today. And with that, okay, I thank you for listening to me, okay, in this video, in this edition of my video. If you like my video, please give a thumbs up. If you hate me, just give me a thumbs down. I don't really care. I really hope, please, for those of you who have not subscribed, please do subscribe. Okay, the button is somewhere down there. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave your comments. Okay, and I will answer them if they are related to my next video, or maybe in subsequent videos I will address them. Okay. So I hope to see you again in my next video. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.